July 8, 2022. Morning in Nara, Japan. A former prime minister stands on a sidewalk outside a suburban train station giving a campaign speech to maybe 100 people in the summer heat. It's a small event, the kind of thing politicians do all the time. Bodyguards are present. Camera crews are present. Everything looks ordinary. Then a man walks up behind him and fires a homemade gun. The first shot sounds like a firecracker. People look around, confused. The second shot brings Shinzo Abe to the ground. Here is the thing that made this case unlike almost any other. Japan has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. Gun homicides here average in the single digits per year across a country of 125 million people. And yet, the most powerful politician Japan had produced in a generation was killed by a man who built his weapon himself, with parts from a hardware store. This is the story of the assassination of Shinzo Abe. It was July 8, 2022. Shortly before 11:30 in the morning, Shinzo Abe stood at the northern exit of Yamato Seidaiji Station in Nara City, delivering a stump speech in support of Kei Sato, a Liberal Democratic Party candidate running in that Sunday's upper house election. Abe was 67 years old, no longer in office. He'd resigned as prime minister in 2020 due to a chronic illness. But he remained the most influential figure in Japanese conservative politics, the face of an era. The crowd around him was modest. A street-level campaign rally, not a state occasion. His security detail was present, but, as would later become painfully clear, not prepared for what was coming. A man had been standing near the back of the crowd, wearing a grey jacket despite the summer heat. His name was Tetsuya Yamagami, 41 years old. He had come specifically for Abe. Yamagami walked forward, closing the gap between himself and Abe. At approximately 11:31 a.m., standing behind and slightly to the left of Abe, he raised a hand-built double-barreled shotgun and fired the first round. The sound, witnesses described it as a bang, almost like a firecracker, made people look around in confusion. Abe himself appeared to turn toward the sound. Yamagami took a step or two forward and fired again. The second shot struck Abe on the right side of his neck from behind. Abe collapsed. Campaign workers rushed to him. Bodyguards, seconds too late, tackled Yamagami to the ground. Yamagami made no attempt to flee. He was still holding the gun when he was restrained. Abe was airlifted by medical helicopter to Nara Medical University Hospital in the city of Kashihara. Doctors worked on him for hours. He had sustained 2 gunshot wounds to the right side of his neck, and doctors reported that a round had reached his heart. Despite every effort, they could not stop the bleeding. Shinzo Abe was pronounced dead that afternoon. He was the first sitting or former Japanese prime minister to be killed since 1936. The National Police Agency Commissioner, the chief of the Nara Prefectural Police, and the Director General of the NPA's Security Bureau all resigned within weeks to take responsibility for the security failure. What Yamagami carried that morning was not a purchased weapon. It was a contraption, a battery-ignited homemade shotgun assembled from materials available at any hardware store. Metal pipes bound together with electrical tape, a wooden board as a frame, commercial batteries for the ignition, and electrical wiring. The weapon was capable of firing 6 pellets at once. It looked crude. It wasn't subtle, and yet it worked. When police searched Yamagami's home and vehicle afterward, they found multiple additional homemade guns, some finished, some not, along with wooden boards riddled with holes he had used for test firing. He had been building and testing these weapons for months. Investigators noted he had assembled an entire small arsenal before settling on the one he would use. The choice of target had also involved a kind of calculation. Yamagami's original plan, according to his own statements to investigators, had not been to kill Abe at all. He had wanted to kill Hakja Han, then the leader of the Unification Church, the Korean-founded religious movement he held responsible for destroying his family. But he could not get close to her. Her security and schedule were too tight. So Yamagami shifted his focus. Abe, he decided, was the most influential political figure in Japan with ties to the Unification Church, a proxy in his mind for the organization that had taken everything from him. He researched Abe's public schedule traveled to Nara, arrived at the station before the rally began, and waited. No specialized intelligence, no insider access, just a publicly announced campaign event on a summer morning, a homemade weapon in a bag, and years of accumulated grief driving everything. The security failure was stark. Yamagami approached from behind, in a gap that bodyguards had left exposed. The first shot startled but did not immediately alert the detail. The second shot came before anyone could intervene. From the moment of the first discharge to Abe hitting the ground was a matter of seconds. To understand why Tetsuya Yamagami did this, you have to go back to 1984. He was 4 years old when his father died by suicide. His mother was left to raise 3 young children, Tetsuya, an elder brother, and a sister. The family had owned a construction business and had resources. They were not poor by birth. Then, in August 1991, his mother joined the Unification Church. What followed, over the next decade, was the systematic financial ruin of the family. His mother donated everything she had, and then more, to the church. By the time she declared bankruptcy in 2002, she had given the organization approximately 100 million yen, the equivalent of roughly $700,000. She donated a parcel of land she had inherited from her father. She donated the family home, the house where her children were living. She made 7 trips to South Korea during this period, each one connected to the church, while her children struggled to eat. Yamagami's uncle later recalled receiving calls from Yamagami and his siblings. Children asking for food, saying the electricity and rent were unpaid. The uncle would bring meals and money. That was the shape of their daily life. Yamagami's elder brother had suffered from lymphoma since childhood, a condition that had cost him the sight in one eye. As an adult, he could not afford the medical treatment he needed. He died by suicide in 2015. Yamagami himself had joined the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force partly as a way to earn money and stabilize his situation. He served for 3 years. During that period, investigators found a report he had written stating that his life had been ruined by the Unification Church and that his brother and sister are in need. After leaving the military, he drifted through a series of factory jobs, dispatched labor, no security, the same precarious work that had appeared in several of Japan's other major criminal cases. His original plan, formed sometime in the years before 2022, was to kill Hakjar Han directly. He had even purchased materials and begun preparing for the attempt, but he could not find a path to her, so he redirected his anger. Abe had appeared in a video greeting played at a Unification Church-affiliated event. The Abe family had a history with the organization going back generations. It said that Abe's grandfather, former Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, had invited the church's founder, Moon Sun Myung, to Japan in the post-war era, impressed by his anti-communist stance. Yamagami came to see Abe as the political center of gravity that sustained the church's influence in Japan. A letter found after the attack laid out this logic in detail. That he could not kill the church's leader, but killing Abe would expose the connection and force a reckoning. This section is interpretive, not a clinical diagnosis, because understanding how a person arrives here matters, even when no explanation excuses the outcome. What stands out about Tetsuya Yamagami is not chaos, but logic. This was not a spontaneous breakdown. He spent months, possibly years, building toward this. The methodical construction and testing of weapons, the research into the target's schedule, the shift from one target to another when the first proved unreachable. Every step of this followed a chain of reasoning he had clearly worked through many times. That kind of deliberate, sustained planning is different from rage. It suggests a man who had decided, with a cold kind of certainty, that what he was going to do was justified. That certainty almost always has a wound underneath it. In Yamagami's case, the wound is not difficult to find. He spent the most formative years of his life watching a religious organization hollow out his family from the inside, selling the house, emptying the savings, leaving the children with no food, leaving his sick brother without treatment until the brother saw no reason to keep living. Yamagami carried all of that for decades and saw the institution responsible for it not just unpunished, but intertwined with the highest levels of political power in Japan. Psychologists and analysts who have commented on the case point to a phenomenon sometimes called proxy targeting, the displacement of legitimate grievance onto an accessible symbol of a larger system. Yamagami could not reach the church's leader, but he could reach Abe. In his mind, it said, striking Abe was the same as striking the structure that protected the church. Whether that logic is coherent or not, it is internally consistent. And that consistency is part of what makes the case so difficult to categorize. There is also the question of what the assassination produced. Within weeks of Abe's death, the media had exposed that 179 of the LDP's 379 lawmakers had documented ties to the Unification Church or its affiliates, nearly half the ruling party. A political firestorm followed. The then Prime Minister Kishida's approval rating dropped from 63% to below 30%. Cabinet members were reshuffled, LDP figures with church connections were forced out. And in a development few would have predicted, Japanese courts eventually ordered the Unification Church to dissolve entirely. None of this justifies taking a human life. But it means that the assassination of Shinzo Abe accidentally functioned as a kind of exposure, pulling back a curtain that had been carefully kept closed for decades. That is part of what made public reaction in Japan so complicated. Some people felt genuine sympathy for Yamagami. Some were horrified by that sympathy. The discomfort never fully resolved. On January 23, 2026, the Nara District Court sentenced Tetsuya Yamagami to life in prison. He had acknowledged the charges against him. His defense presented the full history of his family's suffering under the Unification Church as mitigating context. The court listened, then it sentenced him to life, not death, a distinction that was noted widely in Japan. Abe's legacy is genuinely complex. He was Japan's longest-serving prime minister in history. He restructured the Japanese economy, expanded the role of the Japanese military in ways that were constitutionally contested, and cultivated Japan's international standing with unusual force. He also, by his family's associations and his own political choices, remained connected to an institution that was quietly, systematically destroying the financial lives of its members' families across Japan. Both things are true at the same time. What the assassination cracked open, the UC-LDP relationship, the donations, the scale of the collusion, had been an open secret among Japanese journalists and researchers for years. It had never broken into mainstream political accountability. It took a man with a homemade gun and a destroyed family to force the conversation into the open. That is an indictment not of the man, but of how long the system let that arrangement stand unchallenged. Shinzo Abe is buried. The Unification Church has been ordered to dissolve. Tetsuya Yamagami is in prison for life, and Japan is still sorting through what all of it means. About religion and politics, about accountability, about the costs that get paid by ordinary families when powerful institutions are allowed to operate without scrutiny. Some reckonings come too late and at too high a price. Thanks for watching. If this episode got you thinking, subscribe and stay with us. Because the stories that reveal the most about a society are rarely the ones that get neatly resolved.